Let's talk about diet and the Bible today, and let's talk about Rick Warren and the Daniel Plan. Do you know Rick Warren, the famous author of A Purpose-Driven Life? If you're coming at this from a different religious background, you are welcome here as well. But Christians know the book of Daniel, as especially that first chapter where Daniel refused to eat the king's food and ate only God's food and found improved results. So Rick Warren's like, let's do the Daniel Plan. Now, when I first encountered this fact, and when you see this, the level of incredulity that must inherently, necessarily rise from within will rival any incredulous feelings that you've ever had in your life. Are you ready for it? Included in the Daniel Plan is the consumption of coconut lime shrimp skewers. Now you're going, wait a minute. This is supposed to be the Daniel Plan, like the Daniel of the Bible. Those with limited biblical literacy would encounter very quickly that never in the history of the Bible times did God's people ever eat shrimp, pork, all the unclean meats. They're listed in Leviticus 11. Don't eat camels and octopi and ostriches and all of these unclean foods. But Daniel wasn't eating any meat at all. So if you're going to the Daniel Plan, you're going back to the Genesis, Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve diet. God's original diet for mankind didn't include the consumption of any meat. It was solely plant foods grown from the ground. Now, when does meat eating come in? It's not at Moses' time that the distinction between clean and unclean meats is made. Leviticus 11 lists them, it describes them, but before that, at the time of Noah, is when God first made the distinction between clean and unclean meats. Why at the time of Noah? Well, of course, because when the earth is destroyed and all the agricultural tracts and orchards are destroyed by the waters of the flood, Noah and his family getting off of that ark are not going to be able to grow food to sustain themselves. So the introduction of meat eating came after the flood. Before that, God's people for the first 1,600 years of Earth's history were not consuming flesh foods. But at the time of Noah and through the rest of the Bible times, the meat was being consumed, but only clean meats, and that includes in the New Testament times. People think, well, that's a Jewish thing, that's kosher to not eat pork, and we Christians go ahead and do that. If you want to be a biblical Christian, you would not consume pork because it is unclean all the way through the entirety of the Bible. In the New Testament, Peter sees this vision of animals coming down, and God says, arise, kill, and eat all the unclean animals. And Peter, a New Testament Christian, says, I've never eaten those things. And God's telling him symbolically to not call the Gentiles unclean. Peter makes that clear when he says, God showed me not to call any man unclean. He doesn't begin eating coconut lime shrimp skewers in the New Testament. There is no record of any Christians in the New Testament eating unclean foods. And in fact, all the way down to the book of Revelation, it names unclean birds, and that distinction is still clarified from Genesis to Revelation. Noah is also an interesting factoid because of the first mention of wine. You remember, Daniel not only ate only plant foods, but he drank only water. And Noah is where the first mention in the Bible of wine is. The principle of first mention should trigger an idea in your head. That's an important emphasis being made. The first mention of something in the Bible emphasizes its importance. So what is the teaching there with Noah and wine? Do you remember the story? It's not in your children's Bible stories because unfortunately Noah ends up drinking wine, getting drunk, being exposed. One of his sons takes light of it and ends up being cursed by his dad, and it's an ugly scene. What is the teaching? Alcohol consumption equals ugly scene, equals not good things happening. The Bible calls wine a mocker, a brawler. He who is led astray by it is not wise. It says that we should not even look at it in the cup. So the Bible is clear that drinking the fruit of the vine in its juice form, where there's a blessing in it, the Bible says, this is good for your ailments, Paul said to Timothy, to have some good grape juice, but not as an alcoholic beverage. The Bible does not endorse such a thing. So that's the Daniel plan of the counterfeit and the true Daniel plan. Hopefully you've learned something today. Visit us at revitaliving.health to be a part of what we are doing with your support, buying those immune boosting products, and we will see you next time.